we're getting ready to head out to the site and meet up with our transport team who are dropping off 8 birds this morning. We are super excited. The first birds of the translocation, so we're all amped. I don't think anyone got a wink of sleep last night.
Nervous anticipation. Yeah, it's been a big build-up.
It's really hard not to be a little bit anxious, knowing that those birds are travelling all the way from Jervis Bay down here to Wilson's Prom. And so that moment when we, just quietly lift that little slide and they look fine and then out they go, it's such a feeling of relief.
Today was sensational. Just to see those little birds burst out of those cages with such vigour into the heathland was just a pivotal event in my life, actually, to see that after 30 years of working in this place. The entire population in the world of Eastern Bristlebirds is thought to only be somewhere between 2,500 to 3,500 birds, and that puts them in a very vulnerable position. And in Victoria, we're down to 1 population at Cape Howe.
Because of a sustained level of fox control in Booderee for the past 20 years, and combined with good fire management, there's a good, resilient and quite large population of bristlebirds here, and that just means they're the most suitable for a translocation like this.
Significance of these programs is it doesn't just affect the bristlebird or the quoll, it brings everything else back as well. Sort of brings a balance back to the community.
The process for capturing Eastern Bristlebirds is setting up something called a mist net, and we do something called call playback, where we have a Bluetooth speaker and we cycle through a number of the Eastern Bristlebird calls to try and entice one of the birds to come out of their habitat and fly into the net. We collect the bird and safely transport it from the net into a small bag. At that point, it's then taken to the tent where a health assessment is carried out on the bird. We have a number of experts that are collecting some data on the birds to make sure they're healthy and ready for translocation. We're attaching a number of bands that allow us to monitor those birds. We're also attaching a very small radio tracking transmitter to the back of the bird to monitor the birds post-release.
There's complexity when you bring wildlife, long distances, and lots of different people together. I think for me, one of the really wonderful points about this translocation though is that without doubt the welfare of the animals was always the priority, and so a lot of detail had to go into that.
They're critically endangered, so without intervention with translocations like this, they're a last resort, they're expensive and they're a lot of work, but without that the future of the species is not looking great.
The transport team left with the Eastern Bristlebirds on board at last light, and the reason for this was to encourage the natural circadian rhythm of the bird, to ensure that the bird is well rested, in which it will be ready for release in the morning at first light.
The reason the Bristlebirds have come here is because Wilson's Promontory is a safe place, a buffer against the worst pressures of climate change. It's surrounded by the cool waters of Bass Strait, which means it's always 5 or 10 degrees lower temperature than the adjacent mainland. So it's an ideal place to have as a refuge and insurance option for these critically endangered birds.
Yesterday was idyllic conditions. Today was classic prom weather, and that's what these birds have evolved to cope with, and they'll be fine.
So hopefully, we'll get a few more birds down here and they'll thrive. The habitat's fantastic. There should be heaps of food out there. And next breeding season, fingers crossed, we have little babies in there. Yeah.
Sadly, translocations are now really important, and I think we'll only increasingly see them being used in species conservation. I wish that we didn't have to translocate species, But I'm very glad that we have the capacity, the resources, the will and the people with the skills to be able to do it safely and in a way that we know is going to help those species thrive.
So this project wouldn't be possible without the funding from the Australian government and the Victorian government, and it's been a significant investment into the future of this species. What success looks like to me is my grandkids coming out here and seeing bristlebirds, at the prom. I mean, that would be fantastic.
We've got a bearing of 67, that's 067, with high confidence and constant signal.
We weren't quite sure where they were going to go, but we knew the birds would tell us, and they're certainly doing that. So we've learned a few things. One is that they're crossing the fire break, where we weren't sure if they're going to do that, and they're freely moving back and forth. They're also foraging out into some of the burnt areas where we had a planned ecological burn, and they're utilising those areas to feed.
To start with, I really thought I was seeing things. I thought, no, my eyes are playing tricks on me. And then I crept down and I stayed really quietly, and I was certain I really did see an Eastern Bristlebird in the wild for the first time, in their new home, bouncing away between a shrub and a tree. It looked as though it was foraging to me and looked very healthy and happy in its new home.